Everyone, we're tuning into today's video. Just going to have a look at whether the next 8 to 10 days. In today's video, it takes us up to around the 19th of April, so going into the second half of the month. It looks like we're going to be keeping a lot of anticyclonic influences going over the next week or so, but as we get into the second half of the month, there's always been this suggestion that the first half of April is relatively straightforward, a lot of high pressure, keeping it mainly dry, not completely dry, will be some rain over time, but mainly dry for the first half. The second half has always looked a great deal more complicated, and we're still sort of seeing those indications this morning. There's a big difference really as we get into the second half of the month between the GFS and the ECMWF. The GFS actually hinting a little bit of a Spanish plume later next week, possibly bringing us some heavy rain from the south, whereas the ECMWF generally wants to turn it cooler and pull the winds in from the north. So big difference between the two models for the second half of the month, but things relatively straightforward still up to the middle part of the month. I'll show you all the charts in a moment so you can see what's going on. Before I get on with that, though, just to say about the ads. There's links to articles on all of the pages at gasovbiz.com. The widget sits just underneath where the video here on the homepage. So have a browse through that. If there's anything there that you want to read, just click through. Because you've gone from GasOvis to where that article is, we get a remedy fee on what you're doing. Also got some video ads on many pages now. They open out within the written content. So have a look at those. Only around 20-30 seconds long. You can skip them, but if you could watch them, you'll be helping to pay for the website. And thanks very much for doing that. Right then, just starting off with tomorrow's temperature. It's going to be a very warm day. Tomorrow, this chart from GFS is indicating temperatures possibly up to 18 degrees or 19 degrees. I think we may be able to increase that a little bit more. 20, maybe up the outside 21, can't be ruled out tomorrow. So somewhere around 68 to 70 Fahrenheit. There will be a lot of pollution with that though, so if you've got any respiratory problems, particularly if you live down in the south, around London or some of those cities in the south, do take care tomorrow. The pollution levels are going to be very high indeed with the air coming in off the continent. Now, that's a one-day only offer, although it has been pretty warm through this week. But as we get through to Saturday, significant drop in temperature takes place, so we're back down really towards where we should be at this time of year, so somewhere around 12, 13 degrees in the south, and barely into double figures up in the north. So, but we'll bring a cold front through overnight Friday into Saturday. That could bring some quite heavy rain with it, and it'll lower the temperatures back to average as we get through in Saturday. And that'll feel quite cold compared to what we have had through this week. Now, if we have a look at the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles the next couple of weeks, we can see what's going on broadly in terms of the upper atmosphere. And right now, we're well above average. The red line here is the 30-year temperature average. We're well above the 30-year average at the moment. There's the drop in temperature that's going to be occurring from Friday into Saturday, so it will turn significantly cooler. But then as we go through the weekend and start next week, we sort of bob up and down a little bit until we get through to the middle of next week, and then the temperatures pick up again and it turns quite warm. This is just those hints that I was telling you about at the start of the video of a little bit of a Spanish plume perhaps coming up later on next week. Could turn quite warm, but also there could be some heavy thundery rain coming through with that. Now, beyond this period, and this is the 15th of April just here, so we're going into the second half of the month then. Beyond that, I've got loads of scatter here, so very difficult really to decipher what's happening in the second half of the month. But what I would say is that the overall trend of the ensemble, and you can see that from this white line just here, the overall trend of the ensemble seems to be down with the temperatures into the second half of the month. So it implies that after that potentially quite warm Spanish plume later on next week, it doesn't last very long, and it could well turn significantly cooler into the second half of the month. The precipitation spikes are coming back to some degree as well. Lots of dry weather through the first part of the month up to the middle of the month, again 15th of April, just there. There could be some rainfall coming through overnight Friday and Saturday morning, even in the southeast. That's mainly in the northwest, but some of that rain could get through to south-southeast, but no real precipitation spikes until the second half of the month, and then they do come back. Not a very wet period, you can't say that, but certainly there is more precipitation spikes coming through into the second half of April, but that's all associated with all of this scatter, and I just don't think the models really have the pattern for the second half of the month pinned down just yet. The temperature anomaly for the coming week, going from the 9th to the 17th of April, shows going to be a little bit above average, and that is skewed to some degree by the warmth that we've got at the moment, and particularly tomorrow. But overall, the temperature anomaly, yeah, is above average. A bit of a north-south split with precipitation. Scotland, Northern Ireland going a bit wetter than average for the coming week, the 9th to 17th of April, so it is going to be relatively unsettled up there, whereas the south and southeast still coming out significantly drier than average. So that's a classic sort of north-south split with the rainfall. So let's just have a look at the generic charts for next week, and here we are on Tuesday, and there is that north-south split showing up quite nicely. You've got the ridge down across England and Wales, the low pressure around Iceland bringing these southwesterlies through to Scotland and Northern Ireland. Most southwesterlies could be bringing in some rain at times, so that's a good representation of that precipitation anomaly, actually, with the more unsettled conditions in the north, the driest in the south and the southeast. As we move through into the middle part of the week, the ridge hangs on in the south. It's still relatively unsettled up in the north, and then the ridge slips away later on next week. This is Thursday the 16th. The ridge goes off in towards central eastern parts of Europe, and we're pulling up this southerly wind, and notice pressure is leaking away down to the southeast. That's the hints of the Spanish plume I was telling you about. Low pressure eventually starts to form within that. So have a look at the upper air temperatures. We can see that the upper air temperature is getting really quite warm. We're up to 10 Celsius at 850 HPA across much of France. Sorry, isobars back and the colours back. The warmth is actually originating from North Africa, a central basin of Mediterranean. So it could be one of those situations this comes off where we bring a little bit of Saharan dust up from the south. But pressure is leaking away within this warmth. Notice there's a big temperature gradient. It's actually quite cold up to the northwest of the country with a -5 isotherm there. So there's something like a 15-degree temperature differential from northern Scotland to southern England there. And obviously with that kind of temperature gradient, things are likely to begin to wobble. So you can see we've got heavy thunderstorms being generated down across Spain and Portugal. Some showery rain out in the south and the west on Thursday the 16th. As we run through, we can see those heavy thundery showers and storms start to push up from Spain in towards the Bay of Biscay as it turns increasingly showery over the top of the country. And then bring some very heavy rain up from the south and the west as we go through into Friday. There's the low pressure forming off the Brest Peninsula on Friday. This is a classic Spanish plume type pattern, actually. If this was in sort of the middle of summer, that would bring some really hot temperatures and violent thunderstorms with it. Of course, it's only April, so temperatures are going to be moderated, and that means that the thundery potential is going to be moderated as well. But certainly some heavy rain there would be associated with that low pressure moving up out of France at the end of next week. And then that low pressure ends up sitting right, excuse me, right over the top of the country as we get through into next weekend. So that will turn it much, much more unsettled as we go through the weekend of the 18th and the 19th of April. Be some heavy rain coming up from the south, possibly with thunder. And after a warm start, temperatures would be going really quite chilly as well. If we just run out beyond that, interestingly, we eventually finish up with quite a northerly blast as we get through in towards the 23rd of April and then on into the 25th. Look at that, a real northerly screaming down. There have been those hints within the longer range output that the latter part of April, so the final week or so, could turn significantly colder and more unsettled. Still playing around with that idea. This is 384 hours away, so don't take this seriously at all, but still sort of playing around with that idea that it could turn significantly colder into the second half of the month. A real northerly blast coming through there. Now, that Spanish Plume idea is not showing up on the ECMWS. So as I said, the second half of the month we have got disagreements between the GFS and the ECM. Here's the ECM chart for Tuesday. Again, we've got north-south split, reaching the south, the low pressure up to the north, so that's okay. We go through the middle of next week, still in that sort of pattern. And then what the ECM does is actually takes that high pressure and retrogresses it northwards and westwards. So we don't bring up that warm southerly. Instead, we bring down a chilly northerly. Now, there is a low pressure developing down to the southwest, so it's not that far away from the idea of the GFS, although you would think they are significantly different. They are in some ways. The high pressure here is sitting over Iceland as opposed to across Eastern Europe, but the low pressure is still developing down to southwest, so it may be that it turns either warm or wet at the end of next week, or chilly and wet. We'll just have to wait and see on that one. Eventually, we finish up with the high pressure out to west of the country, bringing down this northerly flow. That's going to be quite cold, and it will produce some overnight frosts as well. That's not as dramatic as the GFS northerly for the final week of April, but it is chilly enough, and certainly there would be an increasing risk of frost as we go through to around the 18th, 19th, 20th of April. Notice that northerly over Scandinavia. There's been some unusually cold air down into Scandi as well. So we've got the pattern set, I think, up towards the middle of next week anyway, which is for high pressure to be clinging on to the south, keeping it mainly dry. It'll be more unsettled up in the north. We get rid of tomorrow's warmth, and then temperatures will be closer to average. Where things go then as we get through into the end of next week and that period into the second half of April, still to be decided. It's all looking very interesting though. It's either going to be pretty chilly or it'll turn quite warm and potentially thundery. So watch this space and see how it's all going to pan out. That's it for now. Jam A Friday tomorrow. So we'll come back to that. We'll be looking at the month ahead. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.